Hi everybody and welcome to the English Labs Texts in 10 video, where we're going to take you through the pairing of Stasiland and Never Let Me Go in an approximately 10-minute video that's going to take a look at the three key things that are going to really open up your understanding of these two texts and how you can be thinking about them as you read them, as you're studying them, and as you're writing about them. And so we're going to jump in with our first idea about these two texts that we think will really help you understand them in great depth, and that is the conditioning of people to accept an idea. And so when we bring this up, I want you to be thinking about how this process happens, how it is that people in both Stasiland and Never Let Me Go condition those within them, condition those that they lead to accept an idea to the point where people accept that that is their reality. And when we start to look at this, we can start to ask ourselves some questions along the lines of, what do these people do in order to manipulate people? And how do different people who are being manipulated react to such a process? And when we take a look at it, we can think about people like Hagen Kosh and the way in which he was this poster boy for socialism and the manner in which he adopts all of these habits and adopts this political ideology that essentially had ruined his family and everything that existed before him. When we take a look at quotes such as, "My upbringing was so GDR," and that the GDR was like a religion, we can see that we have this young boy who's been raised to the point where he found himself educating good socialist citizens for a regime that tried to ruin his family and his life. And so when we start to look at that, we can really open up this idea by using Hagen Kosh as one of those true examples of someone who has been molded by an institution, who has been taught to think a certain way about the world, who has been shown a certain way and manipulated to accept that this is the way that he should be living his life. And not only that, but to be teaching others to be doing the exact same thing. Of course, we can also look at Julia and how she mentions that she felt as if our own country was feeding us lies and that our future depended on agreeing with it all. And the reason that I bring up Julia as well as Hagen Kosh is the manner in which I want you to be able to think about all of the different characters and the different ways that they are impacted by this idea. Because when we start to look at that, that's where we can start to tease out the best differences. Rather than just merely pointing out that both of these texts are about the way in which people are manipulated, it's the reactions to this manipulation. It's the process of manipulation that's going to be the basis for the really insightful comparison. And so when we start to think about that with Never Let Me Go, we can think about characters such as Miss Lucy, who is obviously the one of the educators who is frustrated by the way in which they lie to the children, or the way in which they put their futures out in front of these poor kids who understand where their life is headed but never fully understand the ramifications of what has been set out for them. And so when we look at that, we can see that these young people had been told and not told, that they were never explicitly lied to about their purpose, but they were rather drip-fed this information throughout their schooling, so they just came to understand that their role in this society was to be a donor for other people. And the way in which we can understand that as well comes from Kathy H and the way that she narrates the story and how she never really questions that until she's an adult. And so we move on through that. We start to look at how these people have this great impact upon them. And then from that, you can start to look at the different ways in which the characters react to such treatment. Our second idea is not so much of a thematic idea, but more so looking at how the texts have been constructed. And what I want you to consider here is the difference between Funda and Ishiguro in the way in which they've structured their novels. Obviously, we've got a historical viewpoint when it comes to Stasiland, and we're dealing with factual information and recounts from people who were actually there versus a fictional story. And of course, there's going to be some basis for some comparison based on that. But I also want you to think about how we have Stasiland as this compilation of all of the people that were involved. As well, we also hear from former members of the Stasi and those that don't want to let go of the regime and those that still wish that they were there. And so we have this rounded view of how all of these things work. So as a reader, we can sit back and we can make judgments and we can make evaluations based on all of the views that we hear from. We can compare this to the way in which Ishiguro, in his fictional novel, has been able to have a narrator who isn't as wise as us as the reader, that there is a lot of irony in what we know that Kathy H doesn't know, and that there's a lot of things that are happening here where we actually have a narrator who is not wiser than us, who doesn't know more about this world than what we do. Rather, she's quite the opposite, and she's naive. And so you can use that as part of your discussion and part of your analysis as well when you're looking to make some comparisons, not just about the events of the novel and the characters and what the authors might be saying, but also how they've been able to say it and what the messages that might come from that might be. And so when we look at it, when we talk about Funda taking a look at a land gone wrong, she's merely reporting on things that have happened. And we can start to compare that to Ishiguro, who has chosen to make his warning about these types of things through a fictional way, but he's still going to have those values in which he does that. Our third and final idea for our Text in 10 video is to look at the struggle for individuality. And just like with the first idea, it's about making sure that we go beyond simply pointing out that this is a common thread between the two texts. If we've got to the end of our paragraph or our essay and we've merely just said that both of these texts are about a struggle for individuality, then we haven't gone anywhere far enough in our thinking, and we're not providing any level of depth or insight in our comparison. So rather, we should be asking questions about this struggle for individuality. We should be asking about which character is the most individual. Are there characters that enjoy being a part of a society and conforming to what leaders want them to do? Or are those characters that struggle and rebel against it? When we also look at this, we can think about those who benefit from having people conform in a society or within a group, such as the students at Hailsham, and why they would want people from having a sense of their own individuality. What that means as well is that we can start to look at the different reactions from characters, and that's where we can start to tease out some differences so that we've got some really rich things to say about the manner in which people struggle for their own individuality. A really great way that we see this in Never Let Me Go is Tommy's quote about being a pretty good donor but a lousy carer, and that he has been so indoctrinated with this idea that his worth to society and to society at large is essentially about what he can contribute as a donor to those people before he completes. And the way in which he talks so bluntly about what he was good at and where he gets a sense of value is there through being a donor for other people. We also have things such as, they've been pleased with my work, or it's what we're supposed to be doing, isn't it? And so there's that understanding that these people have been bred for this particular purpose and that they don't have any sense of themselves or their own lives because of the impact that the teachers at Hailsham have had upon them. And so when we look at that, you can also start to think about the manner in which the GDR did this to people and how they kept people homogenised in their views and aimed to have that real lack of individuality or any sense of culture that went outside of their own feelings. When you can start to look at the different people and the impacts that that's had on them, you can start to look at the way in which people react to these situations, be it Miriam without the doors on her house or Julia and her inability to keep an appointment. The one way that you can start to bring out some really great comparisons with this is to think about the GDR in the same way that we think about Hailsham and those people that are in charge and the severe impact that they have upon the individual, where it either strips a person of all their individuality or it leaves a person truly rebelling against that system and how they're going to go with it. And so that's just three things that we noticed upon our first reading of the text that we think might help you really open up your understanding of it. You can jump down into the comments section if there's anything that's been brought up today that you feel you'd like some further clarification on, or perhaps you have a comment or about something that was being said, or you feel that there's more that could be said about one of the ideas that we brought up. We're here to help you out with any aspect of your VCE English, so we have other videos looking at things like sample paragraphs, as well as some other content based on the Section A and Section C for the exam that's coming up. The easiest way for you to keep on top of all of that is to subscribe to our channel. That way you'll receive a notification about upcoming videos that are here to help you. If you've got something out of the video, we'd really appreciate you clicking on the thumbs up and sharing this video with some of your other friends who are studying VCE English. But until next time, thanks very much for watching and all the best for your future studies.